switch on the recording, and I will welcome you all to Active Travel Cafe for the 6th of May 2025. And tonight, topic will be wayfinding, and we've got Mark Hardie from the Applied Information Group who's going to be talking about the inclusive wayfinding toolkit that his company has been developing. But first, before we get there, we will have our crowdsourced news, and I'll bring you some from Oxfordshire in a little while, but let's go for somebody else first. Who shall we have? Let's have Ruth from Chiswick.
Thank you very much. And I can't stay, which is why I'm going to be seriously cheeky, but then you know I am. And rather than put a question in the chat, I'd like one of you to follow it up. I've just been cycling in Derbyshire, which some of you may know is incredibly hilly, and a lot of the signposting, which is very good, said things like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour from wherever you were to where you were going to go. But my climbing up a hill is about 5 times longer than anyone else I was with. So I seem to remember a discussion about rather than timing, mileage is more helpful. And I'd be really curious for somebody to ask that question so it gets posted and will be in the follow-up when the thing is finished. Because I think it's really important that we can't all cycle at the same pace. And thank you for that. And I hope you have a good chat.
Good question, Ruth. We will find a way of getting you the answer.
Thank you.
I'm sure I'm on another group with you somewhere, so we'll get that to you one way or another.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Okay. Any other? I don't see any other hands up. So, well, we had local elections last week. Oh, here we go. Adam, you go.
Sorry, just get myself ready. Yeah, I just wanted to raise the fact that the people may be aware of this, if you're in a mayor or combined authority, that the City Region Sustainable Transport Settlement, which is ongoing at the moment, and lots of people are very excited by, seeing like the 2022 to 2027 program of hundreds of millions of pounds being invested in infrastructure, mainly bus stuff, but also cycle infrastructure as well. I found in a document in Baines that they'd already started working on the 2027 to 2032 set of schemes. So if you're living in a mayoral combined authority, and I'm assuming some of you are, you should be aware that your officers are currently developing schemes that you will be seeing in the next 7 years. And you need to be on top of this right now. You cannot wait until they announce it. You need to get in there and start having those conversations, because the bids for the CRSTS2 or the 2027 to 2032 will be submitted in around the 2026 Q4. That will happen whether or not you're involved in that conversation or not. And then you'll sit back for the next 5 years and wonder, why are they delivering what they're doing? So you have to get involved right now. That's my ominous message for the week.
serious message. Good, thank you, Adam. Good one for the people in those authority areas. And also to do on that local government, the LGA has just published a document. I think it's new. I haven't checked the date on it. A document on how local transport infrastructure influences economic inclusion. It's not all about active travel, it's all forms of transport. And I will put a link in the chat to that, but that is definitely linked to the things we're interested in. I told you last week we were coming up to the elections. It would be a tense one. In the end, the result went very well for active travel in Oxfordshire. The Liberal Democrats, who are very supportive of active travel in Oxfordshire, came through with a majority, 36 of the 69 seats in the county council. The Greens did very well as well. They went up from 3 seats to 7 seats, which is a terrific performance. Oxfordshire was one of the places where Reform got lots of people voting for them, but only came away with 1 seat. We have 2, there was a big in Oxford there was a big anti-LTN campaign. In the end, they had 2 independent councillors elected, much less than the number we were expecting, and in fact, basically the Greens gained 2 from the Greens went in East Oxford. The Greens went from 0 to 2. The anti-LTN is independent went from 0 to 2. Labour was the big loser, and well, it's a good result. It gives the Lib Dems and progressive transport policies a very good run for the next 3 or 4 years, and it's 3 or 4 because in 3 years we might be having another election for a unitary. So good news. Any other local news? No, very quiet news week. I guess everyone's been doing local elections, but not sufficient news. In which case, we will go on to our presentation. Mark, would you like to take it away? Might have a little bit more time than usual.
Yeah.
Starting.
Thank you very much, Robin. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, a little quiet. If you can.
A little quiet.
Turn it up a bit. Sometimes Zoom adjusts as it goes along.
I'll
So
speak a bit louder then, and I'm just going to share my screen. And if you could let me know whether you can see anything.
Yep, that's come through.
Okay. So the way of quick introduction, my name is Mark Hardie. I work for Applied Information Group, and I am the stakeholder lead for the Pathways project, which has been going for 3 years now. I'm going to show you a set of slides. I'm going to do it relatively quickly. I'm going to share the slides afterwards and an email address. If anybody wants to contact me and ask any questions, that is fine by me and welcomed. And I'm looking forward to any questions that you want to ask and any discussions, points of opinion, good, bad, or indifferent, that you want to raise after I've gone through the presentation. So basically, the Pathways project is about creating a new national wayfinding system for walking, wheeling, and cycling. And by national, we mean UK-wide. And we have now 12 pilot studies running across England and Wales, soon to add 1 in Scotland. And we have published a prototype toolkit, which if you Google for Inclusive Wayfinding Toolkit, you'll find it there, and it's free to download. So, what's the Pathways project about, and what are its goals? Basically, the goals are bold and obvious. We want to increase the number of people able to choose active travel options. Particularly, what we want to be inclusive to those who are perhaps more anxious, reluctant to take up active travel options. And we want to enable local authorities and other network stewards, guardians, custodians to be able to implement high quality, consistent wayfinding. And we want to help government at local, regional, and national level to hit targets. How are we going to do this? Well, we want to take very much an R&D approach to creating a better system. And the aim is to create consistent, tested national standards, to toolkit that, and to share with professionals like yourselves. And we're already underway in terms of creating a community of practice through our cohort of pilots and through our advisory group, which I'll explain briefly in a minute. So this is where we stand. I'll explain more detail in a second, but I thought it'd be worthwhile just giving a flyby as to where we stand at the moment. So over 3.5 years or so, we've done a really extensive consultation exercise to establish people's thoughts, what they think the gaps are, what they think the possibilities are. And we've spoken to over 200 organizations, local, regional, and national. We've completed, as I said, the first version of the toolkit. That has been focused on research and development with people over 60. It was funded by Innovate UK, and we worked on it with the Design Age Institute. We've got 2 full pilots ongoing and 9 feasibility studies with quite a number more in the pipeline, and I'll tell you a little bit about where those are in a second. We've kind of begged, stealed, or borrowed so far in terms of funding. Innovate UK, local authorities, regional authorities, even GWR Railway have funded. And we have an expert advisory group, which I'll explain in a second. And we've done some pretty foundational research looking at international and UK-based good and bad practice and manuals. And we've started to create an evidence framework for the pilots with Sustrans Research and Monitoring Unit. And throughout that period of time, we've developed quite a number of partnerships, working partnerships with the likes of Sustrans, LG Tag, Adept, Transport East, National Trust, Canal and River Trust, National Parks, etc. We've also worked on underpinning data and digital, and we've worked very first passes at ROM costs of implementing, of creating a system and of implementing it. This is what the advisory group looks like. They've been together now for 2 years. It's quite a range of organisations, from Director Active Travel England, Sport England, Sustrans, the different nations, National Infrastructure Commission, Phil Jones Associates, various transport accessibility experts, design experts, universities, and I think importantly, the Town Country Planning Association, looking at development plan and planning and connected places catapult. This is a highly collaborative project, but I thought it was worth just explaining who applied are. And they've been working on wayfinding for over 20 years and developed Legible London, the walking system, Waltham Forest, wayfinding, and have worked across a broad range of domestic and international, both commercial and private companies, anything from NASA to Google to Nike to Amazon, and integrated transit systems for the likes of San Francisco. Applied bring a viewpoint, not just in terms of designing signage, but in terms of how that can be scaled and how to toolkit and make it into playbooks. So you may hopefully recognize this as an issue. Basically, difficult local authorities across the country are doing things in different ways. There's a picture of kind of really the good, the bad, and the ugly, but there is no system or standard that's been tested, and it leads to a lot of inconsistency and people feeling unsure, uncertain about the wayfinding and signage and markings that they see. And we've uncovered lots of different scenarios, different colors meaning different things that are downright unsafe, confused, clutter, don't make sense, dead ends, etc. And signage that really isn't understood to the extent that it should be. Why is this the case? We've scoured around about 20 different manuals. And basically, when TSRGD, the road system, was created back in 1963, they thought about putting in walking and wheeling, but decided not to, probably because that was the days of the advent of the motorways, the white heat of technology, and people just generally weren't that interested in walking and cycling at that stage. And the core documents in England, Scotland, and Wales lack any detailed guidance. In particular, LTN 120, we've spoken to the authors, and we've spoken to the authors of other documents, and they recognise that this is the case. And it's all circular, because lots of documents then refer to, have a look at LTN 120, and LTN 120 just lacks any detail. So we've come up with the Inclusive Wayfinding Toolkit. There's the link there. I want to emphasize very much that it is a prototype. It's subject to testing, and it will be iterated. It essentially contains 3 systems along with an underpinning data system. The directional system is about creating networks at hyperlocal, local, regional, and national level for walking and cycling. And you'll see in a second that this is not about trying to rub out local placemaking or local branding. It's about having principles that extend nationally, that are tested, that can be implemented and interpreted locally. In terms of awareness systems, that is about raising people's awareness of what they can do locally, how long it might take, what's around the corner, what's feasible. That can be done in a number of different ways: campaigns, digital mapping, and the like. And I suppose the thing that really struck us in terms of our learnings when we work with over 60s was that there is a bit of a need for a behavioral system. In other words, getting better sharing of roads and paths, because at the moment, despite the highway code, there are no real expectations as to how people should share roads and spaces, and this leads to, as you know, quite a bit of animosity between drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians. These designs are by no means finished. We've been speaking to TSRGD both in Wales and at the DFT, and they are open to consideration of new signing to improving it. These are really simple alterations to enable better understanding. If you look at the no cycling sign, we were really struck by the number of people that just don't understand that, and it's not intuitive. The minute you put a line through it, the understanding goes right up. And if you look at the slightly more positive signing, the pedestrian zone, again, not particularly well understood. And when you put it in more positive terms and more obvious, intuitive terms, people understand it. And this is a sort of basic of design thinking. It's called thinking fast, thinking slow. So you want to have designs that are intuitive and readily understood. And you'll see there the design for by Margaret Culver in the 60s, which on the left-hand side is the original design. On the right-hand side, it's almost immediately more memorable and recognizable. Although if you look at it, it's actually impossible. That design is impossible, but it's a design that works and communicates quickly. These are suggestions for helping to improve sharing of pathways. They're just suggestions at the moment. and we're looking to test them. Some of them have been borrowed from different places, and some of them are new. So these are going to be tested and no doubt amended, improved, adapted as we go on. This is about the network and basically kind of integrating active travel properly. And the pilots that we're doing are very much about integrating active travel with other modes of transport and also cars. So park and rides, rail stations, bus stations, and the like, all are included in the pilots. And you'll notice there that we have the logo for the National Trust, and this isn't about, as I said, rubbing out local identity or brand. This is the sort of feedback that we've had so far. It's almost been pretty well universally positive in terms of, yes, we think there is a gap, yes, we think there is a need, and why shouldn't we have a system for active travel that rivals the world-leading vehicular traffic system that was implemented in the mid-60s. And when you have bad wayfinding, it is often the people with the biggest needs and biggest accessibility needs that suffer the most. And so we've been very particular in getting support from and feedback from people like Wheels for Wellbeing, Transport for All, Activity Alliance, and you'll see how strongly they feel about the need for the Pathways project and improvements. And this is just a quick slide about how the system fits with different agendas. You know, going round there, you can see that it fits a lot of different agendas. And we've been recently, we met with senior members of the Active Travel England last week, actually, and we're in discussions to take this forward with after promising discussions, and that them seeing that it really does kind of fit different agendas. So, near the end, this slide is about creating a common data language for active travel, because Applied have worked across a lot of different settings, both UK and domestically, and we've noted that there is data for active travel, but it's in lots and lots of different formats, which means that it's not shareable, it's not interoperable, which means that planning and investment and comparisons are difficult, that it's impossible for big commercial providers like Google Maps to ingest detailed walking and cycling routing that's accessible. And so one of the members of our team is an ex-technical director of Google Maps and DeepMind. And we've borrowed from the inspiration of the general transit feed specification, which is what allows data to be used by Google and other providers to provide information on your mobile phone about public transport options in real time, which wasn't the case until about 10 to 12 years ago. And if you could imagine that just in one place, they tested it to begin with in Portland, and there were something like 10 different bus providers all providing their data in different ways, making it just impossible to ingest on any sort of large scale. And it is possible, using the technology that's there now, to create much more nuanced information about things like path width, seating, cambers, lighting, etc. The sorts of information that can really help people that are more anxious about it. And we have got the support of a number of different organisations for this: the Open Data Institute, Digital Task Force for Planning, Local Government Association, etc. And you can see that there. So where are we on the programme? It started back in 2021 with a round table with people like Sport England and Softrands and Quality of Life Foundation and others. We then moved on to create a high-level vision and strategy for the National Cycling Network nationally, and that revealed the need for going broader than just the NCN. And we made the toolkit, and now we're on a number of different pilots, which I'll show you in a second. And we're moving to iterations of the toolkit, and hopefully to embed it into a guidance like LTN 120 and Manual for Streets. These are the pilots, quite an array of different settings. It's not a closed list at the moment, and we are considering others. But you've got in Wales, Abergavenny and Merthyr, two totally different places. Merthyr very much about regeneration, and Abergavenny a wealthier tourist but one that's very dominated by cars. In Plymouth, we're working with the National Trust and Softrands and for the City Council to create links to green spaces. In Colchester and in Chelmsford, we're working with Essex County Council and the local authorities and master developers like Latimer Homes Connect travel options up. In Gloucester, we're working with the Canal and River Trust, and this has got a more of a disability accessibility focus. We're starting work still with WACA, and that's focused on the East Bristol Liverpool neighbourhood. We're working with Liverpool City Region Combined Authority, both at a combined authority level and also testing in South Liverpool City itself. We're about to be working in Scotland, and it may be Livingston, Newtown, Livingston. Working with Suffolk County Council on the whole, connecting the whole of Ipswich Town up, and that is linked to a rural connector project with Transport East and Suffolk County Council in Suffolk there. In Kent, we're working on West Maidstone, which is focused on an NHS trust hospital, helping staff and volunteers and patients get their way out to travel means. And in Caldervale Council, we're working with Halifax and with West Yorkshire Combined Authority to create essentially a blueprint for the Combined Authority. We've been working behind the scenes with Greater Manchester Combined Authority on their revamp of the network wayfinding system. Finally, actually, Bath and West of England Combined Authority, and Robin will know that we've also been working with Oxfordshire County Council. And there are a number of other sort of interesting options in fire with Wales and national parks. And for instance, the REC Foundation and Bikeability, who are interested in helping to create better sharing and relations between cyclists, walkers, and drivers. So that's it. I hope I haven't taken too long. I hope that gives you a bit of a starter information. And as I say, really happy to take any questions now or afterwards, and I'll just see if I can stop sharing.
I think I can do that for you, Mark. There we go.
That's great. Okay.
Okay, thanks very much. That was a really good We've started it again.
All right.
That's because both of us did it, I think.
Okay.
Right. Good. Lots of questions come in. I think really interesting topic. And it makes you realise that the signage system is obviously started with cars in mind. It used to be quite informal with automobile associations developing signs, and then became formalised. I'm not an expert in this, but as you say, in 1963. I want to ask. Let me ask an international question or two first. First of all, when you did your research, did you look at international benchmarks? And then, are there one from Wolf in the chat, which is in the Q&A, which is are other countries thinking along the same lines of introducing a inclusive, aligned toolkit? And I'm sure you'll tell me the Netherlands are way ahead of us.
Yes, so internationally, we have had a couple of people advising us, the people who led the Danish system and people who've been involved in the system in the Netherlands and also in Germany. And we've also had a bit of input from the United States and Canada. And the long and the short of it is that as far as we are aware, there are no really detailed toolkits available. But in terms of the systemization, it's pretty obvious the Danish and the Dutch are well ahead. We're aware that Paris, because of the mayor there and the political power that they have, are also advanced. But what we're trying to do is to create a system that works for the UK. It has its quirks, and we think that that can be a leading system like it was for the road system.
Okay, and then I'm going to do the broader questions first, and then come in to leave more detailed ones till later. The reaction of local authorities. So has there been? You've obviously got some who are involved in pilots, so they're quite enthusiastic. Has there been any concern about loss of local approaches, such as they exist, or has there generally been a relief that they don't all have to invent their own systems? And I appreciate you've described that it can incorporate things like local route naming or numbering into the system.
Yeah, so that is a question that is routinely raised and a very legitimate question. And we are, our aim has never been to, as I said a couple of times when I was doing the slides, to rub out any form of kind of placemaking or local branding. And in fact, I think he can actually enhance that. And from what we've heard, the reason that people want to do the piloting is they want to have consistency. They want to have things that are tested, that are proven to work. And interestingly, recently we've been speaking to the national parks, who across the UK, there are 15 of them. And they obviously want to preserve some of what's distinctive about what they do, but equally they understand that it's better to have consistency, better to have testing. And I think we've been talking to people like adepts, public rights of way managers. They feel the same. Spoken to local government association and local government technical advisory group and the like. And everybody seems to be kind of on the same hymn sheet about it.
Right, that's good. And yes, and one of the quirks of it is that some local authorities like numbers, some of them, I know in Buckinghamshire, they've around Aylesbury, they've got the Emerald Way and the Pebble Way and the Diamond Way, but you're not going to that level of standardization. You're saying, well, it's got to be blue, and then you can have a rectangle on top to put your own naming or something like that.
Well, I mean, we've still to work it through. We're at relatively early stages, but we know that this is a key principle, and that the design has to accommodate the placemaking. There may need to be compromises along the way, but we're definitely not about trying to rip everything out and start all over again. It's about, there will be bits that need to be renewed, and this is a long-term game. We're not suggesting that this can be achieved in a year. It's going to take quite a while to do it.
Yes. So another question related to that then is, do you see this eventually being adopted in TSRGD or some other guidance? And then how do you prototype things when they're not in TSRGD, so they're not essentially legal signs? Yes, I mean, those are both two good questions.
So, in terms of kind of permissions to trial stuff, as I said, we've spoken to the leaders of TSRGD, the gatekeepers at the Department for Transport and in Wales, and they are open to testing. What we are aiming to do is to put together a kind of collective ask. So we've got 12 local authorities and quite a number of other supporters, and we want to be able to do it in a systemized way so that it's not just sort of one local authority coming along and saying, could we do this? That there's actually a kind of collective ask and weight behind it. So that's the idea of kind of getting permissions. In terms of embedding it in manuals and perhaps even in statutory instruments and regulations, the answer is ultimately yes. We would like to do that. We've already had interest from the authors of Manual for Streets, who at the DFT want to start to think about how this might be included in Manual for Streets. And we, as I said, we are, if it does require changes in regulation and statutory instruments, then that is what we will aim to do.
Right. So you answered a bonus question, which is that the DFT are obviously supporting this. There's a really good question from Mark at City Infinity, aka Ranty Highwayman. How you change the signs? What if local authorities start just changing the signs, but they're not changing the streets? Because we'd really like the streets to be changed to be better as well. Is there a risk that this exacerbates that effect?
So I'm thinking that this is a question about new infrastructure versus existing infrastructure. I might be wrong, but it's designed to aid existing infrastructure and connect it better. And we hope that it will actually inform better infrastructure design in the future, better connectivity. And we believe that will be the case. So it covers both existing and new. And we're working with, for instance, master developers on new housing estates, some of which haven't even started to be built yet, and some of which have already been built but are not very good in terms of wayfinding. So I don't know whether I've answered that question or not. No doubt I'll hear if I haven't.
Yes, I think it may be an impossible question for you to answer, a bit outside your brief, but it's I mean it's a very good question, and we may have to come back in 20 years' time and see what's happened on that one. Okay, so the questions now get a bit more specific. So I'm going to go to the question that Ruth asked right at the start. Have you found anything about whether it is best to put time on a sign or distance? And there's a lot to that. She referenced it particularly to the vast difference in time it takes to go up a hill in Derbyshire. But there are obviously other situations in which the time will be different. But of course, people will understand time more easily than they may understand distance.
So, very thorny debate this, and I'm going to cop out a little bit, because what we want to do is to do proper R&D, intensive R&D on this question. That is a cop out, I get it.
Yes.
But actually it goes to quite a serious point that basically a lot of the existing wayfinding is just untested. We don't know whether it works or whether it doesn't. And so this is why we're taking a kind of intensive R&D approach to find out what is the best approach. Is it minutes? Is it miles? We have some inklings of what it might be from experience, that in terms of walking, people tend to be shorter distance. People like to think of that in terms of minutes. Of course, should one, for instance, if we are successful in getting the extra travel data specification worked out, then we will be able to provide much more nuance on things like hills and slopes and the like, which will inform people in terms of the obstacles and the difficulties of ascending, say, hills in Derbyshire. And in terms of mileage, we think that distance tends to apply to longer journeys. And of course, people do travel at different speeds, but I think people also have the ability to work out that we're talking about averages here, and people tend to know, are they quicker or are they slower than the average?
Okay, a good answer. Further research is required, and that I think that fits with how you have described your approach to this. It's a researched approach. It's not just here we are and we know the answer. Okay, that's good. I wonder if you've got the similar answer to the next one. So H in Glasgow has a good question about using colours. So this is not directly on the signs, but he's using colours to identify routes or destinations. So that you might have, he gives an example of some forestry commission trails which have a palette of colours, and different destinations have each destination has a colour coded to it, so you can always find your way to that destination just by following the one particular colour. Have you found anything on using colour codes like that?
Yes, so I think we're supportive of colour coding. You're right, I am going to revert to the stock answer of research and development needs to be proven. But as I say, we're in terms of the use of colour, for instance, in Manchester, they're using sort of yellow colour for the B network, and we think that can work. We're also wanting to be mindful and respectful of TSRG and not rip that up. So again, apologies that I don't have any definitive answer to that, but colour coding is obviously important and will play a role. I also want to caveat it by I'm not an actual designer myself. I'm the stakeholder lead, so I'll leave that to the designers to talk about.
Right, and of course it's an inclusive project, so the colour blindness issue is a real one. Yeah, so it's got to be. Yeah. And there are multiple types of that. I'm not an expert, but I know that's that's a factor that's got to be considered. And then route numbering is another issue. Have you tackled any aspects on what the best types of systems are for route numbers? I'm quite a fan of Knalpunt in Belgium and Netherlands, but I don't know if that could be transposed to the UK, because I think it probably needs quite a dense route network to make it work. But I've seen all kinds of different systems and not always been able to fathom out quite how they work.
Yeah, so yes, you're right about the numbering system, the Dutch system. That does require quite a density of pre-existing routes. It was actually considered and taken quite a long way in Greater Manchester, but they have decided kind of against it because they felt it was, if you think about it, you kind of need to be able to write down all the numbers on your hands, and it perhaps wasn't going to be attracting the sorts of people who are less confident cyclists. And so they are moving to more of a mixed system. In terms of route numbering, yes, but we want to keep it simple, and things like, sort of national routes might be an N1 or an N5. Local routes might be a C30 or something like that. We don't want to get into big numbers in terms of the C587 or the like. We think that there can be, you can have a route number, a C5 in Oxford and a C5 in Aberdeen without confusion.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Okay, roadworks. Are you doing things like roadworks signage? Actually, this question is about positioning of roadworks signage, which may be an even more specific thing.
That's a really good question. I've been asked that before.
Yeah, I mean, so from this audience, I know what it means. It's always put in the cycle route or on the pavement.
Right. So I do think that's something that we need to consider. And thank you for the question, and I will feed that back in.
Yeah, we can no doubt provide you with lots of pictures of bad cases.
From the examples, that would be helpful.
Yeah, and I can give you a good practice from Oxford, which is road closed except for cyclists, which is very often you can get a bike through a road closure, but you quite often have to experiment and without knowledge of whether you actually can or not. But this was a sign that actually clearly specified that you could do it. Okay. Yeah. Good. Glad to have added value to the project. Let's think. Let's go to the. Okay, here's a comment, probably more than a question. Yes, not liking please ring a bell because you don't have to have a bell. I think we will not ask you for a comment on that. The red circle signs, yes. So I understand the clarity of adding the diagonal red line across those. The question from Cameron here is that he believes that those were originally just red circles because of visibility from a distance, and wonders if there's been any tests on visibility and whether the new designs you're talking about reduce visibility at a distance.
Again, I do know the red circles stem from, I think, something like the Vienna Convention in the 1940s. In terms of the legibility at distance, I think it's actually a really good example that these signs were designed more for vehicular traffic, and need to be sort of read at a distance at speed, whereas cyclists are going, generally speaking, considerably slower, and walkers considerably slower than that. But the truth of the matter is that that sign causes real trouble. We spoke to a number of older people and a number of cyclists on the same path, who cyclists thinking that actually this allowed them to cycle, and the older people who were reluctant to walk on the path because there were too many cyclists, and actually the cyclists were not behaving poorly, but they shouldn't have been on that path.
Yeah, I understand totally. And okay, there's an interesting one about how you test signs, and have you done any trials where you test different signs on the same location? I mean, we'll go back a bit to the point about they're not legal signs once you deviate from the manual, but that lots of local authorities use signs that are not actually legal, but that might be an interesting experiment to do.
Yes, so we are actually, we've been working on the pilots for around about a year. We haven't yet put anything in the ground, and there are plans to start that in Plymouth this summer. And we're looking at a number of different methods, and we've even gone as far as thinking about kind of virtual reality testing, where it could help to create a prima facie case without actually doing it in real life, and using that to then forward testing going forward. And we know that there are some places. Originally, TSRGD was tested on an aerodrome, and so there are potential places for testing that are a little bit more friendly to begin with to local authorities who are concerned about the legalities and the risks attached.
Yes. H described some testing he did with PVC tape and so forth, but it's a balance between the reality of the situation and the ability to change things and not causing any legal troubles. Good. Yes. Yes, Ailey, I think you clarify the answers to that. The funding is you get funding from central government as well as local authorities. I think that was clear. Some was from UKRI. Was some from DFT as well?
So central funding that we've had so far has been Innovate UK and also Welsh Government. We are and indirectly from Active Travelling and DFT through local funding settlements, but we're in discussions now over the coming month about more central funding from Active Travelling and the DFT.
Good. And then finally, the signs about sharing roads. Do you have any results and things like passing distances and things? Do you have any results from testing those?
No, as I said, we haven't actually put them in the ground yet. They're due to start in the next month or two. Perhaps I could maybe come back in 9 months, and let you know about how some of the testing has gone. But at the moment, we don't have results for that.
Would love to know whether they make a difference to driver behaviour. And I think the overall the framework of direction, awareness, behaviour is. I think that's a very good framework to keep in mind for the whole wayfinding and signage approach. Good. Thank you very much. I think you've informed us, and that was it's a really big, broad, and I think very helpful ultimately project. Getting signage that's more consistent and informative and useful to us will be. We hope it progresses. Look forward to seeing the fruits of your labours. Thank you very much, Mark.
Well, thanks everybody for your questions.
Okay, and so that brings us to the end of tonight's session. Thank you all for attending. Been a really good, interesting session tonight. Next week we have Emma Allen from Gateshead, and she's going to be talking about active travel prescribing. So a health angle next week in our continuing journey around the active travel world, and hope to see many of you then. Until then, have a safe and enjoyable week, and goodbye from me and Adam here at Active Travel Cafe.